I'm 64 years old, and I've spent the last 32 years building what TechWorld magazine called the most innovative cloud security platform in the Silicon Valley ecosystem. My name is Edward Miller, and I came to this country from Vietnam in 1978 with $47 in my pocket and an engineering degree that nobody wanted to recognize. I washed dishes for 3 years while teaching myself to code at the public library after my shifts ended at 2 a.m. By 1993, I had saved enough to start Secure Cloud Solutions from my garage in San Jose. The first 5 years, I lived on instant noodles and slept 4 hours a night. I wrote every single line of code for our core encryption algorithm myself. That algorithm, which I later patented under patent number US 7,891,234, became the foundation of everything we built. In 2008, when the company was finally profitable but still small, I made what I thought was the smartest decision of my career. I hired Marcus Webb fresh out of Stanford. He was 24, brilliant, hungry, and reminded me of myself at that age, just with better English and no accent to hide. His father had passed away when he was in college, and I saw something in his eyes, that same fire I'd had when I arrived here with nothing. I didn't just hire Marcus. I mentored him. I taught him everything I knew about the business, about coding, about dealing with clients who looked at my Asian face and assumed I was just the tech guy, not the CEO. I paid for his MBA at Berkeley while he worked full-time. When he got married in 2013, I gave him $50,000 as a wedding gift because I knew he and his wife Rachel wanted to buy a house. I co-signed their mortgage when the bank said his credit wasn't quite good enough. In 2015, when we landed our first Fortune 500 client, I made Marcus Chief Technology Officer and gave him 25% equity in the company. My lawyer, Tom Chen, advised against it. Edward, he said, that's too much too fast. Standard is 5 to 10% for a CTO. But I waved him off. Marcus was like the son I never had. My ex-wife and I never had children. She left me in 1997 saying I loved my code more than her, and maybe she was right. But Marcus, he filled that space somehow. I taught Marcus the algorithm. The real one, not the simplified version we showed clients. I brought him into the patent filings for our new innovations. I introduced him to every major player in the industry. When investors came calling, I made sure Marcus sat at the table, made sure they knew his name. This is my partner, I'd say, the future of this company. By 2023, Secure Cloud Solutions was valued at $340 million. We had 287 employees. We protected the data of 43 Fortune 500 companies. And on September 15, 2024, we were informed that we'd won the Technology Innovation Award from the American Cybersecurity Association, the highest honor in our industry. It would be presented at their annual gala in San Francisco, with over 2,000 industry leaders in attendance. I was proud. 32 years of work, finally recognized at the highest level. The gala was at the Fairmont Hotel. I bought a new suit, the first one I'd purchased in 5 years. I even got my hair cut at an actual salon instead of the $15 place I usually went to. My hands shook a little as I tied my tie that evening. At 64, this felt like validation of everything I'd sacrificed. Marcus and I arrived together. Rachel was there too, radiant in a blue dress. "Edward, you must be so excited," she said, hugging me. "This is your moment." "Our moment," I corrected her, smiling. Marcus and I built this together. The ceremony began at 7 p.m. There were other awards first, smaller categories. Each winner gave a speech. I watched, my heart pounding, mentally rehearsing what I'd say. I wanted to thank Marcus, thank the team, maybe share a little about that garage in 1993, about believing in the American dream. At 8:47 p.m., they announced our category. And the Technology Innovation Award goes to Secure Cloud Solutions for their revolutionary quantum-resistant encryption platform. Accepting the award, Chief Technology Officer Marcus Webb. I stood up, smiling, ready to walk to the stage with Marcus. But he was already moving, and he didn't look back. He didn't gesture for me to join him. He walked up those steps alone, shook hands with the presenter, took the crystal trophy, and stepped to the microphone. The ballroom was silent, waiting. "Wow," Marcus began, his voice steady and confident. "I honestly never imagined when I started coding this algorithm in my apartment 7 years ago that it would lead to this moment. This award represents thousands of hours of work, countless sleepless nights, and a vision that many people told me was impossible. My smile froze. 7 years ago? I'd written the core algorithm in 2001, 13 years before Marcus even joined the company. It continued. I want to thank my incredible team at Secure Cloud, the engineers who helped bring my vision to life. I want to thank my wife Rachel for supporting me through the difficult early days when I was building this from scratch. And of course, I want to acknowledge Edward Miller, our founder, who provided the initial funding and business infrastructure that allowed me to focus on the technical innovation that made this possible. The applause was thunderous. 2,000 people standing, clapping, for Marcus, for his vision, for his innovation. I sat down slowly. My legs felt weak. Around me, people at our table were clapping too, beaming at Marcus on stage. Nobody looked at me. Nobody seemed to notice that the founder, the actual creator of the core technology, was sitting there like a guest at someone else's party. Initial funding, I whispered to myself. Business infrastructure. As if I'd just been the money guy. As if I'd just filed the paperwork, while the genius Stanford graduate did the real work. Marcus finished his speech with a joke, something about how he could finally afford to upgrade from ramen noodles, which got a big laugh because everyone assumed he'd been a struggling startup founder, not a well-paid CTO who'd received $50,000 wedding gifts and had his MBA fully paid for. He walked off stage, trophy held high. The cameras flashed. Tech World magazine's reporter rushed to interview him. I watched as Marcus posed for photos, Rachel beaming beside him, the trophy catching the light. I sat at that table for another 45 minutes. We were supposed to stay for dinner, for networking. But I couldn't eat. I couldn't make small talk with the venture capitalists who came by to congratulate Marcus's company and ask me how long I'd been working for him. At 9:30 p.m., I stood up. I walked to the coat check, got my jacket, and left. Nobody noticed. Marcus was holding court at the bar, surrounded by admirers, telling the story of his algorithm, his breakthrough, his company. I drove back to my condo in Mountain View. The place I'd bought for $180,000 in 1998, now worth $1.8 million but still modest by Valley standards. I sat in my living room, in the dark, until 3 a.m. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just sat there, thinking. At some point, I pulled up the patent database on my laptop. Patent US 7,891,234, filed the 15th of March 2001. Inventor, Edward Miller. Patent US 8,234,567, filed the 3rd of August 2009. Inventor, Edward Miller. Patent US 9,445,890, filed the 12th of January 2016. Inventors, Edward Miller and Marcus Webb. Only one patent had Marcus's name on it, and it was a derivative work, an improvement on my core algorithm, filed after he'd been CTO for a year. I opened our company's corporate structure documents next, the shareholder agreement, the IP assignment clauses, the employment contracts. I read until dawn, and then I began to plan. Monday morning I arrived at the office at 6 a.m., 2 hours before anyone else. I went straight to Tom Chen's office. He was always early, too. Another immigrant workaholic who understood what it meant to build something from nothing. Tom, I said, I need you to pull every document related to our IP assignments, Marcus's employment contract, the equity agreement, and the patent filings. I need you to prepare paperwork for an emergency board meeting, and I need you to do it quietly. Tom looked at me over his reading glasses. We'd worked together for 18 years. He knew me well enough to not ask questions yet. How quickly? I want the board meeting scheduled for Friday. 4 days. He nodded slowly. Edward, did something happen at the gala? I saw the news coverage, saw Marcus's speech. Just pull the documents, Tom. We'll talk. By Tuesday afternoon, I had everything I needed. The paper trail was clear. Marcus had signed standard employment agreements that assigned all IP created during his employment to Secure Cloud Solutions, which meant to me as the majority shareholder and founder. The core algorithm was mine, patented years before he joined. Even the improvements he'd worked on were technically company property, which I controlled. More importantly, I reviewed our equity agreement. The 25% I'd given Marcus was contingent on several conditions, buried in the legal language. Conditions about representing the company accurately, about not making material misrepresentations regarding IP ownership, about maintaining fiduciary duty to the company and its shareholders. Tom came to my house Tuesday night with 3 banker's boxes full of documents. "Edward," he said carefully, "if you're thinking what I think you're thinking, we need to be very careful. Marcus has built relationships with clients, with the team. This could get messy." "I don't care about messy," I said quietly. "I care about the truth." He stood on that stage and took credit for 32 years of my work. He rewrote history in front of the entire industry. And nobody corrected him because nobody knew the real story. "What do you want to do?" "I want my company back, and I want everyone to know who really built it." Wednesday, I contacted the 3 board members besides myself and Marcus. We had a 5-person board. Me, Marcus, Jennifer Lau from Sequoia Capital, who'd invested in our Series B, David Rodriguez from our banking partner, and Patricia Kim, an independent tech advisor. I called each of them personally. "I'm calling an emergency board meeting for Friday at 9 a.m., I told each one. "I need you there in person, not by video call. And I need you to not mention this to Marcus." Jennifer started to protest. "Edward, that's highly irregular. Marcus is on the board. You can't exclude him from knowing about a board meeting." "I'm not excluding him. He'll be notified. But I'm asking you, as a personal favor, to not discuss it with him beforehand. You'll understand why on Friday. And Jennifer, remember who gave Sequoia the first shot at investing when we had 10 other VCs at the table?" There was a long pause. "Friday at 9, she finally said. "I'll be there." Thursday I worked from home, reviewing every major decision Marcus had made as CTO, every client he'd personally handled, every interview he'd given to the tech press. I compiled a folder of 12 interviews from the past 3 years where he referred to my algorithm, my innovation, my breakthrough. He'd been rewriting the narrative gradually, so slowly that I hadn't noticed until he did it on a stage in front of 2,000 people. I also called my accountant. "Robert," I said, "I need you to calculate the exact value of benefits I've provided to Marcus Webb over the past 16 years. The MBA tuition, the wedding gift, any bonuses beyond his standard compensation, the equity grants, everything. I need a dollar figure." "That's going to take some time, Edward. I need it by tomorrow morning." He called me back Thursday at 11 p.m. "Edward, I've gone through everything. The total value of extraordinary benefits, separate from his regular salary and standard stock options, comes to $387,000. That's MBA tuition, the wedding gift, the down payment assistance, some travel expenses you covered personally, and a few other items. Send me the breakdown. Thank you, Robert." Friday morning I arrived at the office at 7 a.m. I sent Marcus an email at 8:30 a.m., copying Tom. Emergency board meeting at 9 a.m. in the main conference room regarding company IP and governance matters. Your attendance is required. He called me immediately. "Edward, what's this about? Why wasn't I notified earlier?" "You're being notified now. See you at 9. At 9 a.m. sharp, all 5 board members were in the conference room. Marcus looked nervous, confused. Jennifer and David looked curious. Patricia looked concerned. "Thank you all for coming," I began. "I've called this meeting to address material misrepresentations made by our CTO, Marcus Webb, regarding the ownership and creation of our core technology." Marcus's face went pale. "Edward, what are you talking about?" I pulled up the video of his acceptance speech on the conference room screen. We all watched it together. The room was silent except for Marcus's voice claiming he'd developed the algorithm, claiming he'd built it from scratch, thanking me for initial funding and business infrastructure. When it ended, I looked at Marcus. "Is this an accurate representation of how our core technology was developed?" Edward, I was nervous. I didn't mean to. "Answer the question. Did you develop our core encryption algorithm?" "I contributed significantly to." "Did you develop it? Yes or no?" "No, but..." I placed a stack of documents on the table. Patent US 7,891,234, filed in 2001, 7 years before you joined this company. The core quantum-resistant encryption methodology that our entire platform is built on. Inventor: Edward Miller. I slid copies to each board member. Patent US 8,234,567, filed in 2009, 1 year after you joined, covering the secondary authentication layer. Inventor: Edward Miller. More documents. Patent US 9,445,890. Filed in 2016, covering the improvements you actually did contribute to. Inventors. Edward Miller and Marcus Webb. Jennifer was reading through the patents, her expression shifting. David was frowning. Patricia looked shocked. Marcus, I continued, my voice steady. In the past 3 years, you've given 12 interviews where you claimed or strongly implied that you created our core technology. You've told investors, clients, and now the entire industry that you built this company's innovation. You've systematically erased my contributions while taking credit for 32 years of my work. Edward, I never meant to. This is a misunderstanding. Is it a misunderstanding when you told TechWorld magazine in March that you started coding the algorithm in your apartment? You didn't have an apartment, Marcus. You had a desk in my office. You were an employee learning from me. Tom slid another document across the table. This is Marcus's employment agreement, Section 7, Paragraph 3. All IP created during employment belongs to Secure Cloud Solutions. This is the equity agreement, Section 12, which states that equity grants are contingent on maintaining fiduciary duty and not making material misrepresentations regarding company IP. Marcus was sweating now. Edward, please, I was just excited. I got caught up in the moment. You had 7 years to get caught up in the moment. You've been rewriting history systematically, and last Friday, you did it on the biggest stage in our industry. Jennifer spoke up. Edward, what exactly are you proposing? I took a breath. I'm proposing that Marcus Webb be removed as CTO, effective immediately. That his equity be reduced from 25% to 5%, with the remainder reverting to me as the majority shareholder. That he be reassigned to a senior engineer position with appropriate compensation but no executive authority, and that we issue a public statement clarifying the true origins of our core technology and correcting the record. The room exploded. Marcus was shouting, "You can't do this! I've given 16 years to this company." Jennifer was asking questions about legal liability. David was worried about client relationships. Patricia was trying to calm everyone down. Tom's voice cut through the chaos. Actually, he can do this. The employment contract and equity agreement give us clear grounds. The question is whether it's wise. It's necessary, I said quietly. Not for revenge, for the truth. I'm 64 years old. I came to this country with nothing, and I built something that matters. I'm not going to let that legacy be erased because a young man with better English and no accent found it easier to take credit than to share it. The board voted 3 hours later. Jennifer abstained, worried about the optics. David voted yes, concerned about fiduciary duty. Patricia voted yes, agreeing that the misrepresentation was material. Marcus obviously voted no. I voted yes. The motion passed. By 3 p.m. Friday, Marcus had been escorted from the building. His executive email was deactivated. His access to core systems was revoked. Tom had already filed paperwork with the state to update our corporate records. Marcus called me 17 times that weekend. I didn't answer. He sent 43 text messages. On Sunday evening, he finally sent one that made me pause. Edward, please. Rachel and I have a mortgage. We have bills. My entire career is tied to this company. I made a mistake. Please. I wrote back. You made 16 years of mistakes, Marcus. Small ones that added up to stealing my life's work in front of 2,000 people. You have a job as a senior engineer. You'll make $180,000 a year. That's more than I made for the first 20 years I ran this company. You'll figure it out. Monday morning, I called an all-hands meeting. 287 employees crammed into our largest conference room and overflowed into the hallway. I stood at the front, and for the first time in years, I told them my story. The real story. I told them about arriving from Vietnam in 1978, about washing dishes, about the public library at 2 a.m. I told them about the garage, about writing every line of code for our first product myself, about the patents I held. I told them about mentoring Marcus, about believing in him, about giving him opportunities I'd never had. And then I told them what he'd done. I'm not telling you this to make Marcus a villain, I said. I'm telling you because I want you to know the truth about this company. Secure Cloud Solutions was built on sacrifice, on immigrant dreams, on someone who refused to give up even when nobody believed an Asian man with an accent could build something that mattered in Silicon Valley. I want you to know that, because it's your company too, and you deserve to know its real history. The room was silent. Then Sarah Chen, one of our senior engineers who'd been with us for 8 years, started clapping. Then Miguel Rodriguez joined her. Within seconds, all 287 employees were applauding. After the meeting, 47 employees came to my office individually. Many were immigrants themselves, or children of immigrants. "Thank you for telling us," they said, over and over. "Thank you for standing up for yourself." Marcus worked as a senior engineer for 3 weeks. He was good at the job. He'd always been technically skilled, but he couldn't handle it. On October 9th, he submitted his resignation. "I can't work here anymore," he told Tom. "Everyone knows what happened. I can't walk down the hall without people staring. I made a mistake, and I'm paying for it, but this is too much." Tom called me. "He's resigning. What do you want to do about his remaining 5% equity?" "Give him standard vesting. He earned some of it legitimately." "I'm not trying to destroy him, just correct the record." Marcus's resignation was effective immediately. He took a job at a smaller security firm in Austin, Texas. A significant step down, but a fresh start where nobody knew the story. 2 weeks after he left, Rachel called me. We'd always gotten along well. She was crying. "Edward," she said, "I need you to understand something. Marcus never told me the real story. I thought he'd actually built the company with you, as equal partners. When he won that award, I was so proud. I had no idea he was lying, that he'd been lying for years. I'm furious with him, and I'm humiliated, and I'm so sorry. Rachel, you don't need to apologize for his choices." "I do, though, because I encouraged him. I pushed him to take more credit, to be more visible, to own his narrative. I thought he was being too humble, giving you too much credit. I didn't know he was giving you too little. I didn't know you'd actually done everything. He did do important work, Rachel. He was a good CTO in many ways. He just lost sight of where he'd come from and who'd helped him get there." She was quiet for a moment. "Edward, he's in therapy now. He's really struggling with what he's done, with who he became. He wants to apologize to you, but he's too ashamed. Tell him I don't need an apology, but I do need him to set the record straight. Every interview he gave that misrepresented the company's history, every article that quoted him wrong, he needs to contact them and issue corrections." "I'll tell him." It took Marcus 3 months, but he did it. He contacted Tech World magazine, Cybersecurity Today, the Silicon Valley Journal, and every other publication he'd spoken to. He issued corrections, clarifying that he'd been CTO but not the original innovator, that the core technology was my creation, that he'd misspoken due to pride and ambition. Some publications printed the corrections. Some didn't. But he tried, and that mattered. On March 3rd, 2025, 6 months after the gala, Marcus called me. Not texted, called. I answered. "Edward," he said, "I know I don't deserve your time, but I'm asking for 15 minutes. Can I come see you? I'm in town visiting Rachel's family." I agreed. We met at a coffee shop near my condo, neutral territory. Marcus looked different. Thinner, older somehow, though only 6 months had passed. He'd cut his hair short and had dark circles under his eyes. "Edward," he began, "I've spent 6 months thinking about what I did. In therapy, my counselor asked me to trace back when I started believing my own story, when I started thinking I'd actually built what you built. And honestly, I don't know. It happened so gradually. You gave me so much credit, so much responsibility, and somewhere along the way I confused being included in your success with having created it." I sipped my coffee and waited. "The worst part," he continued, "is that I genuinely believe I didn't realize I was lying. I'd told the story so many times, put myself at the center so often, that I started to actually believe it. That's not an excuse. It's just the truth about how I betrayed you. Why are you telling me this, Marcus? Because I want you to know that I understand what I did. I didn't just lie in one speech. I stole your legacy, piece by piece, over years. And I did it while you were treating me like family, while you were giving me opportunities I never earned. You deserved better. You deserved someone who honored what you built, not someone who erased you from your own story." I looked at this young man I'd mentored for 16 years. He was 40 now, no longer the hungry 4-year-old I'd hired. There was something different in his eyes, something that looked like real understanding. "What do you want, Marcus?" "Nothing," he said. "I don't want my job back. I don't want more equity. I don't even want forgiveness, because I don't think I've earned it, and maybe I never will. I just wanted you to hear me say that I was wrong, that I understand why you did what you did, and that if our positions were reversed, I'd probably have done worse." We sat in silence for a moment. "Are you happy in Austin?" I finally asked. He smiled ruefully. "I'm humbler. That might be more important than happy right now. I'm doing good work, but I'm not running anything, and that's probably where I should be. Turns out I was promoted way beyond my actual abilities. You were carrying me for years, and I never realized it. You were good at your job, Marcus. You just weren't the visionary you convinced yourself you were." "No," he agreed. "I wasn't. You were. You are." I finished my coffee. "I appreciate you coming here. I appreciate the corrections you issued, and I'll tell you something I haven't told anyone. I miss having you around. Not as CTO, but as someone who understood the work, who cared about it. You made real contributions, Marcus. They just weren't what you claimed." His eyes filled with tears. "Thank you for saying that. Don't thank me. Just do better. Build something real, something that's actually yours. And when you do, don't diminish anyone else to make yourself look bigger." We shook hands. It wasn't forgiveness exactly, but it was understanding, and maybe that was more valuable. As I walked back to my condo that afternoon, I thought about legacy, about truth, about what we owe to those who help us. I'm 64 years old. I've built something that will outlast me. The patents are in my name, the company's true history is now public record, and the story of an immigrant who refused to disappear is secure. Marcus reached out once more, 3 months ago. He'd been promoted to lead engineer at his new company, purely on the basis of his actual technical skills. "I'm doing good work," he wrote, "but I'm making sure everyone knows exactly what I did and didn't create. It's harder this way, being honest. But it's better. Thank you for teaching me that." I wrote back, "Good. Keep being honest. It's the only legacy worth having." I still run Secure Cloud Solutions. At 65 now, I'm thinking about succession planning, about what happens next. I've hired a new CTO, a woman named Dr. Jennifer Park, who earned her PhD at MIT, and has her own patents and innovations. We're equals in a way I never was with Marcus, because she doesn't need to steal my story to build her own. The American Cybersecurity Association invited me to speak at this year's gala. I declined. I said everything I needed to say the day I stood in front of 287 employees and told them the truth. The award is in a box in my closet. I don't need trophies. I have something better. My name on the patents, my story told correctly, and the knowledge that I stood up for myself when it mattered. Sometimes late at night, I still think about that moment at the gala, watching Marcus on stage erasing me from my own life's work. It hurt more than anything I'd experienced in business, more than the early rejections, more than the investors who couldn't see past my accent. But I also think about the 287 employees who applauded when I told them the truth. I think about the 47 who came to my office to say thank you. I think about Marcus, finally understanding what he'd done, finally being honest. And I think that maybe the lesson isn't about revenge or punishment or even justice. Maybe the lesson is simply this: your truth is worth fighting for, no matter how old you are, no matter how tired you get, no matter who tries to rewrite it. I spent 32 years building something real, and in the end I made sure everyone knew it. That's enough. That has to be enough.